When I was younger and had just started looking into military aircraft, the thing I tried to learn first was putting faces to names. I learned that there are really three categories. The first are planes who have very recognizable names after their designation. This is your P-51 Mustang, F-4 Phantom, A-6M Zeke Zero. Then you have your planes that either don't have nicknames or their nicknames are not as well known. Unlike themselves though, these are your ME-262, MiG-21, Po-2 fellows. Finally, you have the hardest category, planes who are already not that well known and don't have that much of a catchy name to them. Most of these are just strings of numbers. France. I had, and still have, many visual and other encyclopedic resources which I use to learn about military aviation. Sometimes I will pull them out and give them a look through. I was doing this with some friends a while back, and we stumbled across one aircraft that took all of us by surprise. The most striking thing, and trust me, there is plenty to be intrigued with, was the name. Staring up at us, unblinking, was the name 25. Now, why did this result in everyone having a fit for about 5 minutes? I would imagine it is the same reason it was funny to SpongeBob.
Hey, Patrick.
What?
I thought of something funnier than 24.
Let me hear it.
25.
There is no real reason. It was just so ridiculous that it was difficult to take seriously, especially since it sort of just appears all of a sudden after looking through a bunch of Russian aircraft. I digress. There is more to the story though, and this little thing is a lean, mean, killing machine, but not in the skies over Europe, but over the beautiful skies of South America. So today, I would like to talk about the Potez 25. I would like to preface this video by stating that I tried my best to find out as much as I could using reputable sources, while also verifying evidence. But there is very little on this plane, and sometimes the numbers and the information vary wildly. So I have made sure to really only use that which I could have verified twice within what I would consider fairly reputable sources. Let's start with the basics. Somewhere between 3,500 and 4,025s were built, and in some 87 differing variants. Now, variance is a bit tricky here because I think it is more accurate to say 87 plus iterations. More on that later. Around 20 different countries would claim ownership of the Potez 25 during the 1920s through till the 1940s. Although the aircraft would be yet another victim of rapidly changing times for aviation, which is to say, it was already obsolete by the early 1930s, the Potez 25 saw service during the Spanish Civil War and action in French Indochina until 1945. There are even some accounts of Potez 25 TOEs being used up until 1948. Henry Potez had started his aviation career by making props with his business partner in 1913 and supplying said props to Allied nations during World War I in 1917. The Potez 25 was a product of the aeroplane Henry Potez Company. The design was coming on the heels of the Potez 15 and 24. Designed by Henry Potez, the Potez 25 supposedly first came to fruition shortly after the development of the Potez 15. Potez's intention for the aircraft was for it to be generally better than the 15. It would be developed with an all-wood and metal design, which would make it tough and easy to maintain. It was to be a two-seater military observation biplane, and advertised as a long-distance reconnaissance aircraft. The plane was characterized by a, quote, very large, end quote, top wing and a small bottom wing. This would theoretically maximize visibility. The aircraft's wings would be structurally made of wood and have a fabric cover, but metal tubing would reinforce the whole of the wing. The body was made up of 3 sections: the engine, the cabin area, and the remaining fuselage and tail. This made it very easy to modify. The interchangeable power plant allowed for an engine producing 400 to 500 horsepower. The craft would be seen using a wide range of engines, as interchangeability was an advertised and actively used feature. This is why it is often said that the aircraft had 87 variants. The tail shape would also be different depending on the plane. The aircraft first flew sometime in 1924 or early 1925. This is a good time to see just how little I was able to find. I don't think I have ever encountered a time where I could not find the date of a first flight. It was sometimes seen with the given designation GR, which means Grand Raid or Grande Reconnaissance, which is distance cruise, or distance reconnaissance. At the 1924 Paris Air Show, the Potez 25A2 and GR models were not well received, instead being overshadowed by the Breguet 19, which had earned several endurance records. This would soon change, as the company set out to make the Potez 25 a unique aircraft amongst the sea of cheap biplanes already on the market. It set the 1926 distance record at 2,675 miles. In the summer of 1926, Captain Pelletier Doisy and a man simply referred to as Lieutenant Gonin made around 4,049-mile circuit in 41 hours and 40 minutes, night flying included, which covered Paris to Rome to Tunis to Casablanca to Madrid, then back to Paris. Its claim to fame, however, was its ability to reach an impressive altitude for its type. The Potez 25 was the only single-engine aircraft of its kind to be able to fly at an altitude of 21,000 feet. Of course, at the time as well. Some were purchased to be used as postal planes, delivering in the Andes mountain region. 2 all-metal versions with additional fuel capacity were built for a journey from Paris to New York, but this was never performed. After a few sponsored long-distance flights, as well as its growing achievements, some 15 air forces requested Potez 25s. The Potez 25 was built in 4 French factories and under license in Poland, Portugal, Romania, and Yugoslavia. Overall, there were 3 main variants: the A2 Reconnaissance, the B2 Light Bomber and Observation, and the TOE Colonial Use or Export version. The French Air Force asked for around 2,400 25s, which were delivered from 1926 to 1934. The Potez 25 was France's mainstay interwar reconnaissance aircraft. However, the Potez 25 would have a short life. By the mid-1930s, the Potez 25 was already being replaced by the ANF Le Mureau series of observation monoplanes, based on the Mureau 110. The newcomers were the 113, 115, and 117. Many Potez 25s were still in service by September 1939, but there were orders not to use older model reconnaissance aircraft in the event of war until the new Potez 63.11 reconnaissance plane could be delivered to their respective air wings. Although mostly regulated to training and liaison duty by World War II, some Potez 25s saw action in Syria and French Indochina. The Potez 25 as a French aircraft saw limited use and garnered very little in terms of a name for itself. It was far more well-loved outside of its home nation. In France, some 4,000 were built. 150 were built in Poland, over 200 in Yugoslavia, and 27 in Portugal. Around 322 were exported to 17 different countries. China used Potez 25s against the Japanese, which did not work out too well for them. Ethiopia would use 25s against invading Italy in 1935. The Soviet Union took a couple of 25s for testing purposes. They would not buy more as they saw that their biplanes and observation aircrafts were better. The Potez 25 even went to the land of dead empires, seeing service in Afghanistan. The Potez 25 was a 2-seat general-purpose biplane. It was 29 feet 10 inches long, and its top wingspan was 46 feet 5 inches. Loaded, it weighed 5,512 pounds, or 1 bag of potatoes. It would be seen using a wide range of engines, as interchangeability was an advertised and actively used feature. It was typically powered by a piston, liquid-cooled engine, producing anywhere from 400 to 500 horsepower. Its max speed was around 129 miles per hour. Its range was around 750 miles to 783 miles. With no weapons, the Potez 25 GR had additional fuel capacity, which increased its range to 1,553 miles at 112 miles per hour in still air. It had a service ceiling of around 19,000 to 21,000 feet. Under perfect conditions, at 124 miles per hour, it could reach 16,404 feet in 20 minutes, 21 seconds. The aircraft would carry 3 machine guns, 1 forward-mounted Vickers 7.7mm machine gun, 2 flexible rear 7.7mm Vickers or Lewis guns. I found some sources that said that there was a rear, bottom-facing 7.7 machine gun on a trapdoor system in the rear of the aircraft that the crew member could use to fire down and behind the tail, although I couldn't really find that anywhere else except for one source, so take that with a grain of salt. It could carry either 12 10-kilogram bombs in the fuselage, or 16 to 24 10-kilogram bombs on the lower wings. This also varied wildly. I saw many different combinations of bombs and different weights. If it was desired that it be used for reconnaissance, then the bombs were removed, an extra forward-firing machine gun was added, and all ammunition was doubled. Or it could be. It's not like a video game. It's not like just flipping a switch and suddenly all of that pops onto the plane, you know? I was promised death and destruction from this thing that looks like it took a wrong turn in the wormhole and popped out on the second floor war room instead of the first, I hear you say while your mouse hovers over the next plane video. Before you go clicking, know that we have finally arrived. Briefly, the Chaco War was a land/resource-based war fought between the nations of Bolivia and Paraguay from 1932 to 1935. It was fought over control of the oil-rich Gran Chaco region. It is considered to be the bloodiest military conflict in South America's history in the 20th century. The Chaco War is where the Potez 25 shined brightest. Air-to-air combat was very rare, and most planes were lost due to accidents. Those who were lost in battle were mostly due to ground fire. Over the skies of the Gran Chaco, the Potez 25 was a power horse for the Paraguayan military. The Potez 25 undertook a variety of different missions. Air combat was not necessarily its thing, but that doesn't mean it never showed some teeth, like an angry chihuahua. Small, but ferocious. It was of course used in its primary role of reconnaissance. Radio-equipped Potez 25s were used to call artillery. It was when the Potez 25 undertook bombing missions. That is when it turned into a South American horror movie. The Paraguayan military used Potez 25s the same way America used the B-25 against the Germans. The B-25, of course, looking a bit different, and yet the Paraguayan military was not messing around. Paraguay was outnumbered roughly 2-1 in the air, and even that is a shaky comparison when you realize that Bolivia had far superior aircraft compared to them. Bolivia operated 57 to 62 combat aircraft and 22 transports, while Paraguay had 32 combat planes and 23 transports. Paraguay would lose 4 Potez 25s by war's end. As I said previously, the Potez 25 was an older aircraft, and so was the Weebu Type 73 fighter escorts. It wasn't until the arrival in 1933 of the Fiat CR-20 bis did Paraguayan 25s have a proper good escort, though Paraguay only had 5 Fiat CR-20 bis aircraft. In order to avoid death, Potez 25s would dive down to the deck, treetop level, where Bolivian fighters had a difficult time chasing after them. The presence of other fighters, even when one side outnumbered the other, often resulted in either side running away. For example, in June 1934, 4 Potez 25s and 2 Fiat fighters went up against 11 Curtiss Ospreys and Hawks for 20 minutes. The slower aircraft maneuvered away and got to treetop level, and all other planes returned to base. This would not always happen, and air-to-air combat did occur. According to Paraguayan sources, the first aerial combat occurred on the 28th of September 1932. A Potez 25 encountered a Bolivian Vickers Vespa. The Potez pilot was wounded in the ensuing dogfight, but managed to get home. However, there is some beef. Imagine that. Beef between 2 warring nations. No way. Bolivia claims the first air-to-air encounter happened on the 4th of December 1932, where pilot Rafael Pabon downed a 25. Later, on August 12, 1934, the Potez 25 would enact its revenge. Pabon, in his Curtiss Osprey, spotted a lone Potez 25 on a scouting mission over the Florida sector. Pabon went for his second kill of the war. He dove on the 25, but missed. The Potez 25 climbed in spirals, firing off in defense, while Pabon climbed again to meet the 25. Pabon flew above the 25 and then dove down again, missing the plane. The Potez 25 did what they found to be the best tactic and raced to the deck. By this point, Pabon had risen above the Potez 25 once more and dove for a final time. The rear gunner of the Potez 25 managed to get several good hits on the plane. The plane seemed to lose control in the dive and smash into the ground. The Potez 25 TOE could claim an air-to-air victory. I found in some sources that the Bolivian pilot and crew were buried with full military honors, and I do hope that is true. There are some other instances of air-to-air combat between Potez 25s and others, like when a Potez 25 was in a battle with two Bouguer 19 bombers, but many of these engagements I could either not verify or find their outcomes. The Potez 25s were way tougher than they looked, like the granny who hasn't broken their hip just once, but twice, and beat cancer, and survived the flu all in the same year. One example includes a 25 dropping ice blocks to surrounded Paraguay troops during the Battle of Canada Strongest. A Potez 25 was shot 200 times and returned safely to base. Another example includes a 25 who was intercepted and shot by a Curtiss Hawk. The Bolivian pilot believed to have shot the plane down. Though the 25 was on fire significantly, it limped back to base and all survived, except for the plane, which did burn up completely following landing. The real danger was when it was on bombing missions. There are too many to include in this video, but some of the biggest ones I have included. Between September 9th through the 29th, 1932, Potez 25s, escorted by Weebu fighters, carried out 12 bombing raids, killing a significant amount of Bolivian troops during the battle. Most famously, in the summer of 1934, 4 Potez 25s with escort dropped some 40 bombs on Bolivian fortress and airstrip, destroying the airstrip, a handful of planes, which for Bolivia, a handful is damn near a quarter of the Air Force, and crippling the enemy force within. They didn't stop there, though. The Potez 25s then went on to destroy the local fuel depot at a time where entrenched Bolivian forces were in a great need for fuel and oil. Potez 25s dropped some 80 bombs to complete this mission. Now, these bombs aren't 500-pounders by any means, but still, that is a lot of bombs dropped in mid-1930 by a biplane that doesn't even look like it belongs in the war it's in. It's even outdated in the Chaco War, and it still caused so much death and destruction. What is this plane? It's like if somebody was flying a Cessna and crippled the local police force and shot down all of the helicopters with it. What is even going on? Now, I always like looking at the bigger picture when it comes to history, and I would like to quickly do that here. What I learned was that what would become the Axis powers watched air wars like the Chaco War or the Spanish Civil War and learned from them, tweaking their air power prior to the start of World War II. Meanwhile, Allied nations, through the idea that war was not coming and a general disinterest in these lower wars, did not learn any vital message from these air wars. Even more evidence that maybe, I don't know, people should listen to us historians or something if they don't want to start a war with cake on their face. I don't know, it's just a theory. Now, was this a significant player in analyzing the future of air combat? Not by a long shot. Better planes were around when the Potez 25 was wreaking havoc, but that doesn't mean that the Potez 25 should be forgotten. No, I think that it should join the ranks of other warplanes, whose sound alone made a man's knees lock up. A machine which would strike fear into the hearts of men. The unfeeling eyes and the ferocious face of a true killer. The Potez 25. Hello, and thank you so much for getting to the end of this video. If you're here, that's awesome. If you've noticed, there aren't any sources here. Where are they? They're going to be in the description, because now I'm finally allowed to actually put links in my description. So if you're looking for the sources, they're all down there. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was really, really fun making it. This is a silly plane. Let me know if there's any sort of topic or aircraft that you would like to see me cover, and I'll see what I can do. Other than that, I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.